I sincerely wanted to love this game. It seems like the only reason Split Second exists is because the Walt Disney Corporation was going through a phase with their marketing in 2010. They were trying the darker and edgier thing. Tron Legacy was going to hit theaters that same year, the animation side of things was going into that whole Disney XD phase, and it wasn't as though Kingdom Hearts hadn't been a worldwide sensation for most of the prior decade. So Disney asked Black Rock Studio, which they had partial ownership in, to try making a racing game in the thematic style of a Michael Bay film. And that is exactly what happened. Split Second is marketed as a reality TV show, where you drive on a series of closed courses in which special effects and pyrotechnics are used to sabotage other drivers, or in some cases yourself, all in the name of corporate profit. It is a very Disney kind of game, despite not having any of the company's notable IP within it. When this game came out, I was in my final year of high school. I only had time to devote to one racing game, and that game ended up being Hot Pursuit for obvious reasons. I wound up selling my Xbox 360 before going to college, and my one regret was not playing this game. So when I finally got an Xbox One in 2018, this became one of the first games I purchased for the console. I will say, this game is challenging. It took me an entire year to get the Perfection achievement, where you gold medal all series and elite events across all 12 episodes of the game. But while that makes the game seem much longer than it actually is, the sad truth is I had completed the final race of the career long before that, like in the first 3 months of playing. If the difficulty hadn't been there, I would have likely shelved this game faster than any other racing game I have ever played. It really is that short. Each episode is 5 events plus 1 elite race. Simple math tells you that is 72 events total. Burnout Revenge has more events. Burnout Paradise has more events. Hot Pursuit with its added DLC has nearly double the events of this game. But that's not even the worst of it. The number of racing areas is not only limited, it overlaps. Downtown, construction site, expressway, and airport all overlap in some way. Port Bridge, Ferry Wharf, and dry docks all overlap. Power plant and storm drain overlap. And I think that Canyon and Airplane Graveyard also overlap, though you guys didn't see those two in my playthrough. In terms of geographical area, this game feels smaller than Need for Speed Underground, a game that came out a full generation prior and, would you know it, still had more events than Split Second did. Now, to its credit, this game does try to instill some variety. Yes, the standard races, elite races, and eliminators are all pretty much the same thing. Even the detonator races are just glorified time trials. But I will give credit that Airstrike and Air Revenge events were something that hadn't really been popularized in any other racing game before this. They even have a leg up on Need for Speed because while Hot Pursuit lets you EMP helicopters, it's one of the most difficult things to do in that game, and most players discover it completely by accident. Split Second could have been better if it dropped the pretenses of being a racing game, and doubled down on being a battle royale. If players scored points for taking out other drivers, and those points were calculated at the end of each race, and if opening a new route didn't simultaneously close the old route, then every event would have been bigger, crazier, and far more entertaining. Not only that, doing so would have made your race position entirely irrelevant, which ultimately would have been to the game's benefit. While the game tries to be forgiving by letting you advance if you make the top 3, there are a lot of times where you will not make the top 3. There are a lot of times where the driver in first place will be 10 seconds ahead of you, and you will have no idea how or why that happened. That said, if it is you in first place, then you can't really trigger power plays because there are no drivers in front of you to trigger power plays against. Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose of the game? It's like the game wants to have it both ways or doesn't know what to do with itself. And then there's survival. I get what they were trying to do with this, but its execution honestly makes no sense. Other drivers are present, but their presence has nothing to do with the scores you or they get. They don't get in your way, passing them doesn't affect your point count, and them wrecking out doesn't affect what place you're in. What would have made sense would have been having like 32 of them on track and trying to be the last one standing. No points, just be the only survivor. But this game wasn't ambitious like that, which is telling when we remember what the game's Michael Bay-inspired premise was. So, at the end of the day, this game is mid. You'll reach the ending really fast, but then you'll go back and replay the same events over and over for the achievements, unless of course you get bored of that and quit altogether. And while I wanted to make what was available be exciting with my videos on it, I ultimately failed. This reflection will likely, if given sufficient time, have more views than the entirety of videos it was talking about. It was actually quite fitting to have the 7th episode end in such a scuff way, because I don't think anyone would have watched the series to the end, let alone cared. I barely cared, and a part of me is relieved I can move on to projects I have more passion for. If nothing else, thank you so much for watching.